I never thought a single text message could shatter my entire world. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was helping my 9-year-old son Lucas with his math homework at our kitchen table. Just another normal day, until it wasn't. My name is Callie, and up until that moment, I thought I had the life I'd always dreamed of. A successful career in marketing, a beautiful home in the suburbs, an amazing kid. And what I believed was a rock-solid marriage to my college sweetheart, Ethan. The message came from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. My husband, Ethan, sitting at a dimly lit restaurant, his hand resting on top of a woman's. Their fingers were intertwined. The timestamp showed it was taken last Thursday, the night he said he had to work late on the Peterson account. Mom, is 7 times 8:56. Lucas's voice snapped me back to reality. I blinked hard, trying to focus on his worksheet instead of the burning sensation in my chest. That's right, sweetie. You're getting really good at these. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. My phone buzzed again. Another photo. This time, they were leaving the restaurant together, his hand on the small of her back. She was younger, maybe late 20s, with long dark hair and a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Can we have pizza for dinner? Lucas asked, pushing his completed homework aside. Dad promised he'd be home early tonight. I swallowed hard. We'll see, buddy. Why don't you go play your video games for a bit while I start dinner? As soon as Lucas disappeared upstairs, I slumped against the kitchen counter, my hands shaking as I scrolled through the photos again. Everything suddenly made sense, the late nights at work, the mysterious business trips, the new passwords on his phone. My phone buzzed one final time. Thought you should know. They meet every Thursday at Vincenzo's. Table 23. I checked the calendar. 2 days until Thursday. 2 days to decide what to do with this information. 2 days before I would have to face the reality that the man I'd spent the last 15 years loving was living a double life. The sound of the garage door opening made me jump. Ethan was home early, just like he'd promised Lucas. I quickly wiped my eyes and deleted the messages. For now, I'd have to pretend everything was normal. But inside, I was already plotting my next move. Because if there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that revenge is a dish best served with careful planning. The next morning, I sat in my office, staring at the business card in my hand. Sam Carter, private investigator. My colleague Janet had recommended him, saying he was discreet and thorough. I'd never imagined I'd need someone like this, but here I was. Callie. Mr. Anderson's voice startled me. I quickly slipped the card into my desk drawer. Are you all right? You seem distracted today. Just tired, I managed a weak smile. Lucas had trouble sleeping last night. His asthma's been acting up again. My boss nodded sympathetically, but his eyes held a question he didn't ask. I'd worked for him for 8 years, long enough for him to know when something was really wrong. Take the afternoon off if you need to, he offered. The Peterson presentation isn't until next week. The Peterson presentation. The same client Ethan had supposedly been working late for last Thursday. My stomach churned. Actually, I need to stay busy, I said. But thanks. Back home that evening, I found Lucas sitting alone at the kitchen table, pushing his mac and cheese around his plate. No sign of Ethan. Where's Dad? Lucas asked, his voice small. I checked my phone. No messages, no calls. Working late again, buddy. He promised to help me practice for the science fair. Lucas's shoulders slumped. It's next week, and I still can't get my volcano to work right. I watched my son's disappointment, and something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about me anymore. Every broken promise to Lucas was another crack in our foundation. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan: "Sorry, emergency client meeting. Don't wait up." I typed back: "Lucas needed help with his science project. You promised." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I'll make it up to him this weekend." The same promise, different day. I opened my contacts and dialed the number on Sam Carter's card, stepping onto the back porch for privacy. "Mrs. Monroe," a gruff voice answered. "I've been expecting your call." I frowned. "How did you?" "Janet called ahead," he explained. "I have an opening tomorrow at noon. My office or somewhere more discreet?" Through the kitchen window, I could see Lucas still pushing his food around, shoulders hunched. The sight made my decision easier. "There's a coffee shop on 5th Street, the Daily Grind. Noon works." "I'll be in the back booth," Sam said. "Bring any relevant information you have. Photos, schedules, anything suspicious." After hanging up, I stood watching the sunset, my hands gripping the porch railing. Tomorrow, I'd take the first real step toward uncovering the truth. Toward either saving my marriage or burning it to the ground. Either way, Lucas deserved better than broken promises and empty chairs at the dinner table. Sam Carter slid a manila envelope across the coffee shop table. His expression remained neutral, professional, but there was a hint of sympathy in his eyes that made my stomach drop. "You might want to look at these somewhere private," he said. I clutched the envelope, feeling the weight of what lay inside. "How bad?" "Bad enough that I'm giving you my emergency contact number." He pushed a business card toward me. "Your husband's been busy." I waited until I was alone in my car to open the envelope. The photos spilled out like poison: Ethan and his mystery woman entering hotels, sharing intimate dinners, shopping for jewelry. But it was the last photo that broke me. Ethan was crouched down, smiling, his hand resting on the woman's stomach in an unmistakably tender gesture. My phone rang, making me jump. "Martha, my mother-in-law." "Callie, dear. Are you coming to Sunday dinner? Lucas has been asking about it." I stared at the photos scattered across my passenger seat. "Martha, I need to tell you something." 20 minutes later, I sat in Martha and Frank's living room, the evidence spread out on their coffee table. Martha's hands trembled as she picked up photo after photo. Frank stood by the window, his back rigid with anger. "That stupid, selfish boy," Martha whispered, tears streaming down her face. "How could he do this to you? To Lucas?" Frank turned suddenly. "Is she pregnant?" "I don't know," I admitted. "The photos suggest." "Where is he now?" Frank's voice was dangerously quiet. "At work. Or so he says." I laughed bitterly. "He's supposed to be home for Lucas's science fair presentation tonight." Martha reached for my hand. "You have to confront him, dear. Before this gets even more complicated." "I know." I squeezed her hand back. "But Lucas. His asthma gets worse when he's stressed. The science fair means everything to him." "Then we'll be there," Frank said firmly. "Both of us. Whether Ethan shows up or not." My phone buzzed with a text. "Ethan, stuck in traffic. Might miss the science fair. Tell Lucas I'm sorry." I showed Martha the message. She closed her eyes, pain etched across her face. "He's not even trying to hide it anymore, is he?" "No," I replied, gathering the photos back into the envelope. "But neither am I." I typed a response: "Don't worry about the science fair. Your parents will be there to support their grandson. By the way, how's the Peterson account going? Still keeping you busy on Thursday nights?" The three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing. "It's time," Frank said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Let him know we're all meeting here tomorrow. No excuses." I nodded, feeling strangely calm. The weight of secrets was lifting, replaced by something stronger, the certainty of what needed to be done. The science fair was in full swing when I spotted Mr. Anderson in the crowd. He wasn't supposed to be here, but the sight of a familiar, supportive face made my shoulders relax slightly. "I hope you don't mind," he said, approaching me. I remembered Lucas mentioning this was tonight. Before I could respond, Lucas came running over, his volcano project clutched carefully in his hands. "Mom! Mr. Anderson! Did you see? I got first place." "That's amazing, buddy." I hugged him, careful not to disturb his creation. "Your dad's going to be so. Is he coming?" Lucas's eyes darted toward the entrance. The hope in his voice made my chest ache. Mr. Anderson smoothly intervened. "Hey Lucas, why don't you show me how this volcano works? I heard you figured out the perfect chemical reaction." As Lucas eagerly led Mr. Anderson away, my phone buzzed. "Not Ethan, Sam Carter. Mrs. Monroe, we need to talk. Now. It's about the pregnancy." I stepped into the empty hallway. "What about it? The dates don't add up. According to my sources, Miss Reynolds has been claiming she's 4 months along. But your husband's involvement with her only started 2 months ago." The world tilted slightly. "Are you saying either she's lying about the timeline, or the baby isn't his?" "But there's more. She's been seen meeting with another married man, Thomas Wheeler. He's a partner at your husband's firm." I leaned against the wall, processing this information. "Does Ethan know?" "Not yet. But Mrs. Wheeler does. She hired me last month." Martha appeared in the hallway, her expression worried. "Callie. Lucas is asking for you. His breathing seems a bit labored." I ended the call quickly and rushed back to the gymnasium. Lucas was sitting with Mr. Anderson, his inhaler in hand, while Frank hovered nearby. The sight of my son struggling to breathe while his father missed another milestone ignited something fierce inside me. "I've got your nebulizer in the car," I told Lucas, rubbing his back. "Let's get you home." "But Dad might still come," he wheezed. Mr. Anderson caught my eye. "I can help get everything packed up here if you need to go." As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from Ethan, stuck at work. "Tell Lucas I'm proud of him." I showed the message to Martha, who pressed her lips together tightly. "Frank, why don't we follow Callie home? Lucas might need his grandparents tonight." Later, after Lucas was breathing normally and finally asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with Martha, Frank, and a glass of wine I couldn't bring myself to drink. "There's something else you need to know," I said quietly, and began to tell them about Sam's latest discovery. The look that passed between them told me everything. It was time to stop protecting Ethan and start protecting ourselves. The jewelry store security footage arrived in my email at 3 a.m. Sam had come through again. I watched as Ethan and Bianca browsed engagement rings, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. The timestamp showed yesterday afternoon, right when he'd claimed to be in court. My phone lit up. "Martha. Turn on the news," she said without preamble. Channel 7. The headline made my blood run cold. Local law firm partner Thomas Wheeler arrested for embezzlement. The reporter mentioned ongoing investigations into other partners at the firm. "Frank's already called his lawyer friend," Martha said. "If Ethan's involved, he could lose everything," I finished. "Including his share of the house." "Callie." Lucas's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway, pale and clutching his inhaler. I had a bad dream. Why are you awake? I quickly switched off the TV. Just couldn't sleep, sweetie. Come here. As I held him, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. About Ethan. Meet me at Riverside Park, 10 a.m. Bianca. I got Lucas back to sleep and called Sam. Don't go alone, he warned. This woman's desperate. The Wheeler arrest changes everything. I know. That's why I have to go. Mr. Anderson caught me as I was leaving the office later that morning. Callie, wait. I know something's wrong. Let me help. I can't involve you in this mess, I said, but he grabbed my arm gently. You already did when you let me care about you and Lucas. His eyes held something more than friendly concern. At least let me drive you. Bianca was already at the park, pacing near the fountain. She looked nothing like the confident woman from the photos. Her designer outfit couldn't hide her anxiety. He's going to leave you, she blurted out as I approached. We're moving to Chicago next week. He's already accepted a position there. I felt Mr. Anderson tense beside me, but I stayed calm. Does Thomas Wheeler's wife know about your baby? Bianca's face went white. What? The timing, Bianca. It matches perfectly with Wheeler's business trips, not Ethan's. You don't understand, she stammered. Ethan and I are both being investigated by the FBI, I cut in. Sam Carter isn't just a private investigator. He works with their financial crimes unit. It was a bluff, but her reaction told me everything. She grabbed her purse and practically ran from the park. Mr. Anderson whistled low. You know the FBI isn't really. No, I said, watching Bianca's retreating figure. But Ethan doesn't know that. And neither does she. I pulled out my phone and texted Martha, time for that family meeting. Tomorrow night. Make sure Frank brings his lawyer friend. The game was changing. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about survival. The family room at Martha and Frank's house felt like a courtroom. Ethan sat across from me, his face ashen as Frank's lawyer friend, David, laid out the evidence of his connection to the Wheeler embezzlement scheme. The FBI is building their case, David explained. They'll be making more arrests next week. This is ridiculous, Ethan snapped, but his hands were shaking. I had nothing to do with Tom's decisions. I slid the jewelry store photos across the table. Like you had nothing to do with Bianca Reynolds. Martha's sharp intake of breath cut through the room. Frank stood up abruptly, walking to the window. You had me followed. Ethan's voice cracked. No, I replied quietly. Someone wanted me to see the truth. Just like Mrs. Wheeler wanted to see it. The baby isn't yours, I continued. But you knew that, didn't you? You were just a convenient escape plan for Bianca once Wheeler got caught. Ethan's face crumpled. Callie, I can explain. Can you explain this to Lucas? Frank turned from the window, his voice thick with emotion. Can you explain why his college fund is gone? The room went silent. My heart stopped. What? I whispered. David cleared his throat. The account was emptied last week. Along with several other family accounts. I was going to put it back, Ethan pleaded. Bianca needed help with legal fees, and I thought. You thought what? Martha's voice shook with rage. That stealing from your son was acceptable? My phone buzzed. A text from Sam, Wheeler talking to FBI. Names being named. Get out of there now. As if on cue, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Ethan bolted for the back door, but Frank blocked his path. Don't, Frank warned. Face it like a man, for once in your life. The next few minutes blurred together. FBI agents reading rights. Handcuffs clicking. Martha crying. But all I could think about was Lucas, sleeping peacefully at Mr. Anderson's house, unaware that his world was about to change forever. Mrs. Monroe. An agent approached me. We'll need your statement about the missing funds. I nodded numbly, watching as they led Ethan away. He looked back once, his eyes meeting mine. I'm sorry, he mouthed. But sorry wouldn't pay for Lucas's medications. Sorry wouldn't explain to our son why Daddy was gone. Sorry wouldn't undo the fact that I'd failed to protect my child from his own father's betrayal. Martha squeezed my hand. We'll figure this out, dear. Together. But as I watched the patrol cars drive away, I wondered how many more pieces of our lives would crumble before this was over. And whether any amount of revenge could make up for what Lucas had lost. The courthouse parking lot was empty except for one car, Bianca's sleek Mercedes. She stood beside it, mascara streaking her cheeks, clutching a manila envelope. My heels clicked against the pavement as I approached, each step echoing with purpose. He's going to prison because of you, she spat. No, I corrected her, stopping just out of reach. He's going to prison because he chose to steal from his son. We were going to start over, Bianca's voice cracked. Away from all this. Away from Wheeler and his schemes. I pulled out my phone, playing the recording Sam had given me. Bianca's voice filled the space between us. Tom, baby, don't worry. Ethan doesn't suspect anything. He actually thinks the baby's his. The color drained from her face. Wheeler's wife sent me that, I said quietly. Along with bank statements showing where the money really went. Not to your legal fees, to an offshore account in your name. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You played them both. But you didn't count on Wheeler talking to the FBI, did you? She thrust the envelope at me. Here. Take it. It's everything, account numbers, passwords, transfer records. Just tell them I cooperated. Before I could respond, a familiar voice called out, Bianca. Ethan, still in his suit from the arraignment, jogged toward us. He stopped short when he saw me. What are you doing here? He asked, looking between us. Telling your wife about the baby, Bianca said, her voice suddenly strong. About how it's not yours. About how none of this was supposed to happen this way. Ethan's face contorted. What? Oh, come on, Ethan, she laughed bitterly. You really thought I loved you. You were just convenient. A backup plan when Tom started getting sloppy. I watched the last pieces of Ethan's world crumble. In that moment, I felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Just emptiness. The house is in my name, I told them both. Frank made sure of that years ago. The FBI has frozen everything else. So whatever plans you had, they're over. Callie, please, Ethan reached for me, but I stepped back. Lucas asked about you this morning, I said. He wanted to know if you'd be home for his birthday next week. I told him the truth, that his daddy made some bad choices, and now he has to face the consequences. Bianca slid into her car without another word, leaving Ethan standing there, broken and alone. I never meant to hurt him, he whispered. I know, I replied, turning away. That's what makes it worse. As I walked back to my car, I deleted the photos from my phone. I didn't need them anymore. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone, it's about walking away and letting them destroy themselves. 6 months later, I sat in Mr. Anderson's, James's, office, staring at an email that had just arrived. The sender's name made my heart skip, Sarah Reynolds. Bianca's sister, I explained to James, who stood behind my desk. She's the one who sent those first photos. Why is she contacting you now? I read the email aloud. I thought you should know, Bianca's in rehab. The baby was born last week. Wheeler's wife is raising it. Sometimes karma works in strange ways. James squeezed my shoulder gently. Speaking of karma, Frank called. The trust for Lucas is set up. With the money they recovered from Bianca's accounts. And Wheeler's restitution, I finished. I know. Lucas will be okay. The thought made me smile. My son was more than okay, he was thriving. His asthma was under control, and Martha and Frank had become even more present in his life, filling the void Ethan left behind. My phone buzzed with a text from Martha, lunch today. Lucas made the honor roll. We should celebrate. As I gathered my things to leave, James caught my hand. Callie, about dinner tomorrow. I need more time, I said softly. Lucas is still adjusting, and I'm not ready to. I know, he interrupted. I just wanted to say there's no pressure. We have time. Walking to my car, I passed the coffee shop where I'd first met Sam Carter. He'd sent me one final message last week. Sometimes the best revenge is living well. At the time, I thought he was just being kind. But now, watching Lucas run toward me from Martha's car, his science fair medal glinting in the sun, I understood. Revenge hadn't healed us. Love had. The love of family, both blood and chosen, who stood by us when everything fell apart. Mom! Lucas called out. Grandpa Frank says we can get ice cream after lunch. Can we? Of course, sweetie. I hugged him close, breathing in the scent of his shampoo. Do you think? He hesitated. Do you think Dad knows I made honor roll? I sent him a letter, I assured him. With pictures. Lucas nodded, processing this. I'm glad we're okay, Mom. Even without him. As we walked into the restaurant, I caught sight of our reflection in the window, mother and son, surrounded by family who chose to stay. The woman in the glass looked stronger than the one who'd received that first anonymous text, more certain of herself and her worth. Revenge might have started this journey, but love had finished it. And sometimes, that's the best ending of all. Martha waved us over to their table, and I felt the last piece of my broken heart heal. We were going to be more than okay. We were going to be extraordinary.